Hello and welcome to a continuation of our discussion of the place function. This time we will focus on marketing channels. And one thing to keep in mind is that intermediaries, which was the topic of the previous video, and marketing channels, there's a tremendous amount of overlap. And as I mentioned in the previous video, sometimes I don't know whether to talk about intermediaries first or marketing channels first. And we'll get a sense from when we operationalize what is meant by marketing channels and look at a few topics in this discussion. We'll get a sense for how closely channels and marketing intermediaries are related. So what we'll do in this discussion is we'll talk about marketing channels. We'll define, operationalize marketing channels. We'll talk about why marketing channels slash intermediaries should exist. And we'll look at a couple of key topics associated with marketing channels, one of which is known as distribution intensity, and the other we'll look at is vertical marketing systems. And so first thing, first thing to do is operationalize what is meant by marketing channels. And here is a definition of marketing channels. A set of interdependent organizations that make a product available for use or consumption by an individual or an organization. So again, a set of interdependent organizations that make a product available for use or consumption by an individual or organization. And so a typical marketing channel would consist of a manufacturer, a wholesaler, a retailer, and then the consumer. And again, you start to say, hey, wait a minute. Right? Aren't wholesalers and retailers intermediaries, which is what we talked about last time? Absolutely. So, channels are made up of intermediaries. They're also made up of manufacturers. They're also made up of consumers. So, and there are many other kinds of marketing channels other than the manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. And your book lists several representative or several different types of marketing channels. But a key thing in the definition or the way that I operationalize marketing channels is the idea that the organizations are interdependent, right? And that's a key word. They're not supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be interdependent. So things that a manufacturer does, for example, can impact a retailer or a wholesaler, and decisions that retailers make can impact wholesalers and manufacturers. And oh, by the way, decisions that manufacturers make could impact consumers. And so there's this interdependency, although there are occasions where the various entities in a channel may not work together, and we'll talk about that later on in this discussion. But a key thing is that the channels, they're interdependent. The organizations that are in a channel, the individuals that are in a channel, there's an interdependency. And again, we're making the product available for use or consumption by individuals or organizations. And again, what we're going to be focusing on are more marketing channels related for consumers rather than the marketing channels that are related to organizations, because again, we're all consumers and we have some familiarity. And so one of the things to think about is that there are what are known as direct channels, and that refers to a channel where there are no intermediaries between producers and consumers, or manufacturers and consumers, right? So you've got a direct channel, and a direct channel would go straight from the manufacturer to the consumer, right? There are indirect channels, and these are channels that have one or more intermediaries between the manufacturer and the consumer. And one of the things to keep in mind is that anytime you add an intermediary into a distribution or a marketing channel, you are adding cost. So, for example, if you think about, some of you are from the Rochester, Buffalo area, and I think a number of you, shop at Wegmans, for example. And if you're from Northeast Ohio, you might go to Giant Eagle. Well, those are retailers, right? once you add a retailer into the system, you've added tremendous cost into the system. If for no other reason, you think about it, you got to build the store, you got to build the physical facility, right? And then there are employees that work in the facility, right? And you got to put shelves in the facility and you got to put cash registers. I mean, there's all these costs that come into the equation. So a legitimate question is, well, why do we need, why do we need intermediaries in a marketing channel? And in fact, why do we need marketing channels? And the answer to that question, it's the same answer, is that marketing channels and marketing intermediaries exist if they add value to the distribution process, right? So again, marketing channels and the intermediaries that might exist in them, right, only exist if they can add value to the distribution process. And again, remember when we talk about value, we're talking about the relationship between benefits received and resources expended. So the fact that a Giant Eagle or a Wegmans adds tremendous cost into a system, you say, well, what value does a Giant Eagle or a Wegmans provide? Well, you think about it, is that it allows you or me to go to the store and get a whole bunch of things at one time rather than having to contact the manufacturer of Green Giant green beans, right? And say, oh, I want some Green Giant green beans. And then you say, well, I want some Diet Coke. Okay, big Diet Coke drinker. And you say, oh, I want my Nutri-Grain bars. And then you say, oh, I want my Mott's applesauce. And you say, oh my goodness, right? And I can go, I can go to a Giant Eagle and I can get all those things, right, at that one place. So there's a value added by, kind of facilitating the number of trips that a consumer has to make in order to get product. So again, right, marketing channels and intermediaries, only exist if they can add value to the distribution process. And one of the things to keep in mind is that channel design has been changing in recent years, in part because of the advent of technology and different ways of adding value, or newer ways of adding value. So for the example I like to use is, I worked for a trucking company after I got my MBA, and one of the things that we handled was we handled stuff for Atlantic Records and CBS/Sony records. And so we were literally carrying albums, and we were carrying cassettes, and we were carrying 8-track tapes. And the CBS facility was in Pittman, New Jersey, and we'd run a truck in there and take out a whole bunch of, albums to go to various places. Well, first of all, who buys vinyl anymore? Although vinyl is coming back, gotta be clear, vinyl is coming back. But there are different ways that music is distributed now, right? And so you don't necessarily even need the physical product. You don't need the album. You don't need the cassette. You don't need the 8-track. And later on came the compact disc. So you think about how that's shifted, like how value is added in a marketing channel. And I know that a number of trucking companies that used to make a pretty penny, because we used to get paid pretty well for hauling the records and the albums for Atlantic as well as CBS Sony. So and you think about video, right? I mean, my wife a number of years ago had a part-time job at Blockbuster, and she was 4 out of 6 months she was the Blockbuster employee of the month. What happened to Blockbuster? It got wiped out pretty much when Netflix came along. So again, these intermediaries that exist, there's no law that says they need to be around. And again, it's all about adding value. All right, so a little bit of overview of marketing channels and why they exist and the role that intermediaries play. So again, we're going to look at two specific topics. The first that we'll look at is a concept known as distribution intensity, and that refers to, the number of members to use at a particular level in a distribution or a marketing channel. So again, the number of members to use at a particular level in a marketing marketing channel. They say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, if you've decided to use, let's say, a manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer, if you decided to use that kind of, pardon me while I get a little bit of refreshment, if you've decided to use that kind of distribution channel, the question becomes is, okay, so how many retailers? And the distribution intensity concept is generally applied to retailers. And there's three types of distribution intensity. There's what's known as intensive distribution, there's what's known as selective distribution, there's what's known as exclusive distribution. And intensive distribution refers to placing a product in as many outlets in a particular market as you could put it in. Right. So if you think about something like bread or something like Pepsi-Cola, to give an example, I think, or Diet Pepsi, to give an example from the second written assignment. Those things are everywhere, right? And so the distribution intensity says, or intensive distribution says, we're going to put the product in as many outlets as we can in a particular market. The other end of the spectrum is exclusive distribution, and exclusive distribution refers to when a producer grants exclusive rights to a retailer to sell the producer's product in a particular market. So again, exclusive distribution refers to when a producer grants exclusive rights to a retailer to sell a producer's product in a particular market. And so you might sometimes see something being promoted as exclusively at. So for example, it might be exclusively at Saks or exclusively at Dillard's, or it could be exclusively at Walmart. What's happening is that, yeah, there might be a lot of different Walmarts in a particular geographic market. However, the only place you could buy that product would be at a Walmart, or if it were exclusively at Dillard's, right, the only place you could buy the product would be at the Dillard's in a particular market. And then kind of a hybrid is selective distribution. And selective distribution refers to products that are sold at a limited number of outlets in a particular market. So you might be able, for example, you might be able to find a product at a Dillard's and a Macy's and perhaps at a J.C. Penney's. So it's not exclusive, but you're not putting the product everywhere, and so you have a limited number of outlets. With selective distribution intensity, you have a limited number of outlets that the product is available in. And I'm a logistics guy. He said, I mean, you keep on saying you're a logistics guy. And the distribution intensity consideration is important from a logistical perspective because the supplying of outlets is very different depending on whether you have intensive distribution or whether you have exclusive distribution. So, in an intensive distribution where you got a product that's being put in a lot of different stores, something like vehicle routing becomes very important. So that if you're, for example, if you are a Frito-Lay delivery person, right? The order in which you serve particular retailers is important because if you put together, if you being Frito-Lay, if you put together really crazy trips, that you go to a store in Mentor, and then you go to a store in Cleveland Heights, and then you go to a store in Parma, and then you go to a store in Willoughby, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because those stores are all over the place. And maybe if you go to Mentor, you might go to the one in Willoughby and then work westward. So there can be a lot of inefficiency involved with distribution, with intense distribution or intensive distribution. Okay, so we talked a little bit about distribution intensity. And the last thing we'll conclude this discussion looking at is the concept of vertical marketing systems. And your book has a diagram that Exhibit 16.4 that looks at how a vertical marketing system differs from a traditional marketing channel. And one of the challenges I always had, and this particular topic didn't click with me until maybe 20 years ago, literally after I'd been teaching this course for a number of years. And I always said, well, what the hell? Every depiction I had from a marketing channel was that they were laid out vertically. So you had a manufacturer, and then you had a wholesaler, and then you had a retailer, and then you had a customer, right? Vertical, right? Not horizontal like this. So I'm like, what the hell is this? What's this big idea about vertical marketing systems, right? I just didn't get it. And when it finally dawned on me, when I finally, started thinking about what was going on, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And so here's what is meant. Here's what is meant. And this is one definition of a vertical marketing system. So a vertical marketing system refers to planned marketing systems to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of distribution process, a planned marketing system to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the distribution process. So again, planned marketing systems to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency, of the distribution process. And the key here is that the intermediaries work together to improve service and lower cost in the distribution process. So rather than, channels are made up of intermediaries, but in a vertical marketing system, the intermediaries and the producer, they work together, they coordinate and collaborate to help improve service and lower costs. And you say, well, that's really vague. Can you give me an example? I can give you an example of a company that isn't engaged in a vertical marketing system. So if any of you are from Northeast Ohio, or if those of you who aren't from Northeast Ohio have ever gone into a Mark's, which is a deeper discounter, right? Mark's is part of a marketing channel, but Mark's does not buy into the vertical marketing system concept. There's no collaboration or coordination going on between Mark's and wholesalers or Mark's and manufacturers or producers, right? So, as opposed to other types of channels where there is collaboration and coordination. And your book talks about, and we'll talk about, three types of vertical marketing systems. The first of which is an administered vertical marketing system, and that's where the coordination and the collaboration is driven by the most powerful party in the channel. And so again, administered vertical marketing system is where the coordination and collaboration is driven by the most powerful party in the channel. Classic example is Walmart. Walmart, just because of its size, right? Walmart basically says to either wholesalers or manufacturers, this is what we want. If you want to do business with us, this is what you have to do. But the idea is it's not all to benefit Walmart, because what Walmart's really trying to do is offer product at low prices to consumers. So if Walmart can prod or poke, encourage or maybe discourage suppliers, to take inefficiencies out of their system, those inefficiencies, which translate into additional cost, can be taken out of a system. And we take inefficiencies out of a system, you can offer lower prices. Okay, so you've got the administered vertical marketing system. There's also the contractual vertical marketing system, and this is where the coordination and cooperation is achieved through a formal contract. An excellent example of a contractual vertical marketing system is a franchise operation. So, for example, a number of McDonald's in the United States are franchise operations. And so what the franchisee, the party that's buying the franchise from McDonald's, agrees to do is it agrees to do a lot of things according to what McDonald's wants done, and also, right, the franchisee gets to take advantage of the tremendous buying power that McDonald's has, right? Because, when McDonald's is going to a potato company and says, we need X number of French fries, they can get a lot of price efficiencies because of that, because of their size. And then the third type of vertical marketing system is what's known as a corporate vertical marketing system, and this is where the coordination comes from ownership and control. So a company is basically, it's the old vertical integration thing that you might have learned about in a Principles of Economics course. The book uses Zara as an example, and Zara is an excellent example. Zara controls some sources of supply. Zara has its own manufacturing facilities, and Zara obviously has a store. So there's the coordination and the collaboration is driven by the fact that the one party basically controls multiple layers in the distribution channel. So that's where we'll stop because I'm almost at the 20-minute mark, and that we will talk to you next about logistics, which is allegedly something I know something about. Bye.